Hi guys, and welcome to another Alt Painter Nerd tutorial. And in this tutorial we're going to be painting Dr. Octopus from Marvel's Crisis Protocol board games from start to finish. But first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to the guys over at Stronghold Games in Hull who sent me the box set out for review. If you are in Hull or you're ever visiting, please pop along to their store and you'll find an absolutely amazing shop chock full of hobby goodies. In this tutorial I wanted to paint Dr. Octopus up as simply and easily as possible. You'll see that it's not the best paint job you'll ever see in the world, and it's definitely not going to win any awards, but if you want to use Games Workshop's contrast paints to get some really quick, simple tabletop ready miniatures, then I hope this tutorial helps. Okay, as always guys, it's going to be a long video, so go grab yourselves a nice hot drink or maybe a nice cold beer and we'll get started. I'm starting off by priming the miniature using Alclad 2's Lacquer Primer White. It's very important to note that you need to be well ventilated and wearing a respirator if using Alclad primers. Also, you need to have a good quality airbrush with PTFE solvent proof seals. If you have a lesser quality airbrush with rubber seals, the paint will damage your airbrush, so please make sure you check that you're able to use Alclads in your airbrush. Okay, I'm priming the miniature at about 20 psi at about 3 to 4 inches away from the model, and I'm constantly moving the model and the airbrush to make sure I don't build up paint in any one spot. As I mentioned at the start of the video, we're going to be using contrast paints to get a really simple and effective finish to the end result of the miniature. But the contrast paints work well under the correct base colour. Now we're going to be using yellow for his boots, his gloves and some of the trim on his actual outfit. But if you actually use the yellow contrast paint that we're going to use a little later on in the video over white, it won't work as well. So here I'm using a Shabty Bone from Games Workshop to create a base layer for that contrast paint to go onto. Now we're going to go over all the bone areas of the miniature that I painted earlier with Iodine Yellow from Games Workshop's contrast range. You'll see here that I'm using a Red Grass Games 02 brush, and the reason I'm using a very small brush in general on the miniature is I don't want to show a really large amount of paint washing over the miniature. Games Workshop recommends you saturate the whole miniature in wash, but doing this, unfortunately, you'll be left with staining on the top surface of the miniature. So it's much better to apply it in a couple of passes and only let it pool in the recesses, as you can see on this central light on his waist. going to use Orc Flesh contrast paint from Games Workshop, and this goes on fantastic over a white base coat, so we don't need to do anything on the areas that we're going to be painting the Orc Flesh on. Just being careful not to get them on any of the yellow that we painted a moment ago. And as you can see, I'm applying it nice and smooth and as even as I can, and trying not to get any on the yellow, which I just did. But yeah, just try not to let it pull too much. Try and keep control of it as much as you can, and you'll get a nice end result where you'll get some really deep shading in the recesses, and then it will have a lighter tone on the top surfaces of your miniature. It's important to come back in with dead white from Vallejo Game Air or any white colour that you have, to be quite honest, and touch up any areas that you got the green on, areas that are going to be left white in colour. So that waistband of his should be white, and I've got a tiny amount of the green Orc Flesh on that waistband, and I'm just touching it up so we can come in with a contrast paint shortly. Here's a look around the miniature so far where we are. We've painted all of the yellow and all of the green. We're going to add some contrast to the waist band in a moment, but as you can see, even at this early stage and using very simple straightforward techniques, it's starting to look good. Now we're going to use contrast apothecary white, and we're going to apply it to the waistband of Dr. Octopus. Now I'm going to use Vallejo Model Colour Light Flesh. I really like this colour. It's very pale, and it enables you to add a wash afterwards that will leave all of the staining in the recesses but leave the light flesh colour behind on any of the top surfaces of the face. We're not going to be using contrast paint for the flesh here, as I don't think it works as well as washes. So we're just base coating with a light flesh, and then we'll come in with a flesh wash shortly. Now we're going to use the Army Painter's Flesh Wash, and I think this is much better than Games Workshop's Flesh Wash, and it works really well. And as you can see here, I'm just applying it on the miniature. I'm letting it gather in all of the recesses, but I'm just making sure that it's not pulled too much on the top surfaces of the face. Now we're going to apply the contrast paint Griffhound Orange onto his hair of Dr. Octopus there, and as you see, it goes down really nice, and we're using that really small Red Grass Games paintbrush again, just to make sure that we're not going to get any of that Griffhound contrast paint onto any other parts of the miniature. Now we're going to use AK Interactive's Dunkel Grey base. Please forgive the pronunciation of the name there. And here you can see I've just base coated the base, and we're going to be washing it with some Nuln Oil in a moment. Now I'm going to use Vallejo Metal Colour Gunmetal Grey to paint all of Doc Ock's arms, or whatever you want to call them. I'm just going to call them arms for now. But yeah, this paint is really great for airbrushing, but it also hand brush paints beautifully as well. It's super thin but gives great coverage, so it's like a two-way thing, in the sense that it will not only go on thin, but it will also give one coat coverage, which is perfect for a paint. Now we're going to wash the base with Nuln Oil, and we're also going to wash those tentacles or arms on Doc Ock. After allowing the base to thoroughly dry, we're coming in with Vallejo Game Air Wolf Grey, and we're going to dry brush the base. Make sure you remove most of the paint off the bristles of the brush and lightly brush backwards and forwards, catching all the raised surface detail of that base. we're going to add another texture to the base using Abtalung's 502 pigments. We're using rubble dust here, and it's just going to add a nice little texture to the base. The last thing to do with the miniature is apply a satin varnish. If there's any areas that we've got slightly glossy finish from some of the metalwork or from some of the paints that we've applied, the contrasts or the other base colour paints we used, it's going to dull it down and give a very even, smooth surface to look at. It's also going to seal in those pigments that we applied earlier on as well. So the satin varnish is a great thing to add to the miniature to finish it off. And here we can see Doc Oct completely finished. As I mentioned at the start of the video, guys, it is a very basic paint job, but sometimes you just want to get a miniature on the tabletop and you want him to look nice, but you don't want to spend forever painting them. And this is the theory with Doc Ock. I wanted him to look nice, but I didn't have much time to paint him, so I went with Games Workshop's contrast paints, which if used correctly can give you really great results. Okay guys, lastly I want to thank Stronghold Games in Hull once more for sending me the miniatures out for review, and also I'd like to say thank you to you guys for taking the time out of your day to watch my videos. It's really appreciated. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and even better still, leave a comment at the end of this video and let me know what you think of the tutorial. Thank you for watching guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.